Hello, this is Mark Holmes, the editorial director of Via Satellite, and we're back for another of our fantastic Thursday morning conversations. And we're back again with our good friends at ST Engineering iDirect. This time we're talking to Koen Willems, who's the head of global government strategy and market development at ST Engineering iDirect. And we're going to talk, we've been having a lot of conversations about ground technology and the new ground platform and program, but we're going to talk very specifically about some of the government aspects and how the government how the government customer may be a little bit different from the commercial customer, and how companies like ST Engineering iDirect can serve this particular customer going forward. So, Koen, welcome. How are you today?
I'm pretty okay. I just had my coffee and my croissant.
Excellent. So ready to dive into a good conversation about ground tech. So as I said, over the last few months, we have talked a lot about new dynamics in the ground sector and what new ground means in the satellite industry. But let's talk specifically about new ground and government. The government customer, while a lucrative one, we all know that, has been notoriously difficult for the commercial satellite industry to monetize and have an even better relationship with. Koen, is that changing now? Is the government attitudes towards satellite and satellite tech? Do you sense there's a change in the dynamics of the relationship?
Well, it depends a bit per country, per customer, and per individual who you talk to, right? So, indeed, you got certain governments that run a bit faster than others. So, there is still a lot of, a traditional approach out there. And the more you go to the military side, to tactical communications, etc., the more traditional they get, due to the fact, of course, that everything needs to be secure. And if it worked in the past, why shouldn't it work today? But you see that certainly on the government sides, and newer applications, and where they see that applications need more like bandwidth, or they're adding in new capabilities. I'm just taking it as an example. You have a F-35 fighter jet. You need to offload all that information, and obviously you can't do that through 2 megabits per second pipe, right? So that is hundreds of megabits per second. So you need to find new ways in order to tackle these questions. And basically, you need new satellite constellations, new ground systems in order to cater for these new capabilities. And what that new capability gives to the end user is, in fact, a tactical advantage. And indeed, some of these governments have had that idea, and indeed, they think that having that tactical advantage is pretty important to them. Certainly, if they are against an adversary who is on equal levels, and as such, giving that tactical advantage through new capabilities, through new satellite constellations, through new ground capabilities, that's certainly an asset that they're looking for.
Okay, I just want to stay on this subject just a little bit more, because in these conversations, in these webinars, we've talked a lot about the goals of new ground and what ST Engineering is trying to sort of engineer and really provoke a discussion on the ground tech side. But is there a subtle difference in terms of what new ground means in a government context compared to what it means in a commercial context?
Well, there are a lot of similarities, obviously, because there is a lot of business applications that also run in the government as they would run in business. But there are still some very specific applications, first responders, obviously, that also applications that revolve around security and providing security. So, as such, the approach and sometimes also requirements can be slightly different in that context. So what we see is that basically you can still come in with a commercial platform, but you'll need to adapt certain things to increase the cyber security, and to adapt obviously also some requirements or feature sets towards the applications themselves.
Okay. We're now going to talk about a white paper that ST Engineering iDirect's has put together, which is super interesting. I got to read it a few times this week, and it talks about the 6-stage evolution, almost from a traditional VSAT network to ultimately a 5G based network. It's a very interesting white paper. We will obviously send you links where you can read this, post this conversation if you're interested. But it's got a number of stages about how these networks are going to sort of evolve over time, or how they have been evolving. So Koen, let me ask you, could you talk to us about this 6-stage evolution and where we are with this evolution in terms of a government context?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, well, the whole purpose, indeed, for writing this white paper was, for me at least, to give kind of a guideline to government and defense agencies in a step-by-step approach in how to go from a more traditional satellite platform VSAT approach towards newer capabilities and towards cloud-based and 5G approach. And indeed, we identified 6 individual stages to go towards the final stage, and you see them listed here, right? So, and typically, you don't need to jump from stage 1 directly to stage 6. So it depends a bit on the government agency itself, what the applications are, what the budget available is, what type of services that they want to acquire or that they want to run. And I would say, okay, if you have a traditional VSAT service and you're happy with it and it does what you need, and nothing more, then that's fine. I mean, but still, you already need to take into account certain things like the complexity that new type of operations bring to you, because these type of operations, they are more global, they are based on more on the move and on the pause type of platforms. I mean, vessels, aircrafts, unmanned aircrafts, land systems, etc. So already in a traditional based VSAT networks, there are already a lot of complexities that are coming towards the end user. So already there is things to do. And then, but gradually, if you have, for example, for a first responder network, you might need a more hybrid approach, which is then the second stage, where you could switch between a terrestrial communication system and a VSAT system, and see what is the best availability for a certain link. Let's say that if your traditional LTE has more bandwidth in a certain area, then obviously you would to go for that bandwidth. If the satellite provides you better bandwidth and better services at a given time, you can go for that in order to still provide that mission critical information to headquarters or to exchange logistic information, etc. So having this hybrid infrastructure and approach is quite important to first responders, and would be as a next step. And then you go step by step in for example, if you want to link to different satellites in different orbits, I would say in LEO, MEO, or GEO orbits. If you want to hook up on pooling and sharing platforms, so where, for example, governments organized a managed, or at least a service towards nations or to its agencies, where that government agency pools bandwidth from different providers and provides that service to that specific government agency for ad hoc interventions for disasters or whatsoever. And then obviously, then you go to the more cloud approach and the 5G approach, right? So you can do that step by step. You can maybe skip a step even, or a stage, but at least the main purpose here was to say, okay, we are ready. to guide you guys through that evolution, going through these different stages. Some of the technology is already there, is already out there, but some also for us, some of that technology is still in full development, right? Because also for us, going to the full 5G state is like the rest of the industry is still finding out and still developing certain technical capabilities. And okay, but you need already an architecture that is ready for that, and that is indeed what you need to have at stage 1.
No, tremendously interesting. Thank you, Koen, for sort of talking about that sort of 6-stage evolution. I sort of noticed, though, that sort of a hybrid terrestrial and satellite network was stage 2 out of 6. It seems we're not that far removed from stage 1. What is your take on that?
Well, indeed. So you already have these hybrid networks, right? So they do already exist, and the point is that in the past you had, well, a clear-cut satellite network and a clear-cut terrestrial network, and have them interfacing together. That would have been a difficult task. So the approach here is where there is a better interfacing between these two type of networks, and for example, capabilities that have dynamic routing across both networks. Plus also interfaces that are based on standards, and as such that you can basically orchestrate capabilities between satellite and between the terrestrial network.
Okay, no, very interesting stuff. I want to go and talk, have a case study now, and let's talk specifically about Europe, because we know that you've done some really interesting work there, and like in Europe, there's some very ambitious satellite plans going on right now. These are involving around the European Secure Space Connectivity System, ESSC. How does a company, I mean, I'll ask a multi-pronged question here. Firstly, how does a company like ST Engineering iDirect get involved in a big European government projects like this? And if we look at specifically in a European context, how open are European governments to thinking about satellite in a different way, being open to concepts involving virtualization and cloud, for example? And so, yeah, I mean, it's multi-pronged, but how things are changing in Europe, and tell us about what's been going on with some big government institutional projects in Europe.
Yeah, well, Europe has a lot of catching up to do. I think that's everybody realized around the table at the European Commission that the state of the industry and the state of art in Europe was not up to levels compared to, for example, US and other. And they all see the newer constellations, the Starlinks, the OneWebs, and Amazons, etc. Basically, they knew that they needed to do something, because in this new geopolitical world, you have the different blocks, and one of the elements in the discussions between the different geopolitical blocks and one of the races is, of course, the technology race, and the technology race is also focusing on satellite, on space. Is a big part of that, and Europe wants to play along with the big guys. So as such, they concepted an idea to have a proper space program, so consisting of the positioning, the PNT element, the element of Earth observation, but also, of course, which is important to us, the communications part. And as such, they are planning, or they're budgeting still, because still to be fully decided on a constellation, satellite constellation for the EU for satellite government communications, and as such. Probably that will be in the LEO orbit, and they want to encompass all that new capability in there. And as such, they will support European industrial base to develop these newer type of technologies. So so you've got two elements here. One, it's the element that they want to be a part of that new space or a race for space. And secondly, they want to support the European industry base because all of these projects are basically funded. Then I come to your first question on how is our company involved. Well, the first thing that we needed to do, because we're a global company, is to make sure that we created the proxy. So a proxy is something that is very known in the US to participate in US DoD programs. So the same thing goes for Europe. So we created here in Belgium a proxy, a EU a legal entity, let's say, and following the right rules and the regulations and the conditions, etc., we can also participate as such in EU programs and then receive funding to develop certain capabilities for that EU LEO program. So, and as such, I think it works on both ends, right? As mentioned. So for us, it's a lift because it gives us an opportunity to investigate and study these new capabilities, and also to make sure that we can develop these elements. And on the EU side, of course, in the end, they will get a pretty good end product, which will be state of the art.
Oh, fantastic. Just sort of final sort of couple of questions. We've talked about the European case study. We've talked about the 6-stage evolution, which I think is fascinating. I really would recommend anyone watching this to go to the white paper and have a read. It's really it's very futuristic, and I think a great change in how the networks are going to evolve over time. I suppose the big question for me, and what this all comes down to is, when we look at North America, we look at Europe, and we look at other places where there could be big government projects, what needs to happen for new ground to make a big impact in the government arena? And tell us, how you see things happening. I mean, clearly there are some sort of exciting projects at play. It's a great time to be involved in our industry. We all know that. But if we can talk just specifically in a government context, what needs to happen for new ground to make a big impact here?
Well, I think firstly, initiatives like the EU LEO program and these type of initiatives where governments take a pile of money and they distribute it amongst the different participants in the industry to come together with a solution. So it's and to come to a common understanding and a common requirement set, standardization, and as such also a final constellation which is accessible to governments, not only the big governments but also to smaller governments, etc. So I think a big responsibility is indeed is required in the hands of governments. But of course, it's also our role in terms of thought leadership, because we know about the technology and we know what the capabilities are in the future. Although I would not say that they are futuristic. I mean, because a lot of these ideas are in full development, right? So basically, they are they're not something that are out there in 20 years. This is things that we're talking about in 2, 3, 4 years for some items. So or things that are already currently available today. So as such, I think you need one, government initiatives. 2, it's up to us to raise awareness as an industry. 3, you always got that unfortunate part as well. I mean, you have the conflicts, you have the disasters, and obviously, what the government seeks is to approach this in an efficient way. to at least make sure when there is a disaster that they can respond to it as quickly as possible, that they can, well, if there are fugitives, if there's anything to care about, that they have the full communication set. So that's an unfortunate thing as well, that because that is accelerating the growth, or at least accelerating developments as well, as we've seen in World War II and World War One and two other wars that were always accelerators for technology. So, and that will also remain the same in future, unfortunately. But okay, that's what it is. So we've got these three elements certainly kicking in, and well, I would say that it gives an opportunity for an exciting industry as ourselves to grow, because it certainly is a growing industry, and and the point, what we see is that we're not considered as a niche anymore, because satellite communications was a niche industry, but now as there's more standardizations, as we have hybrid networks, as we are interfacing with terrestrial industry, we're now part of the big telecom networks, and basically, I would say that the world is becoming wireless. You still have some copper and some fiber in the ground for for backup, whatever. But basically, everything else is becoming wireless. And if you have your cell phone, it will choose whether it will connect to a tower or to a satellite in future, etc. So, and satellite is a full part of that, and as also for the government. So it's not only for the commercial world, but increasingly also for governments, that whenever you're in operation, that with one device, basically you can have that connectivity for video, voice, and data, high-end connectivity, and obviously seamless, available all of the time through the different sources. So I think that's certainly also one of the opportunities out there.
Certainly plenty of opportunity out there at the moment, and really looking forward to seeing how this evolves, as you said, over the next 3 or 4 years. Koen, it's been an absolute pleasure today to talk with you and talk about how this technology is going to evolve, particularly in a government context. It's a really exciting time, and I know that as a company, you're bringing out some great technology and some great solutions. So wish you and all the team at ST Engineering iDirect all the best as you look to sort of develop this over the next few years. Really appreciate your time today, taking the time to talk to us here at Via Satellite, and we wish you all the best. So thank you very much, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Yep. Thank you. Cheer up.